Thanks very much, Chair. And to you, Minister, you talked about illness prevention. Can you tell Canadians how many Canadians, in percentage-wise, are struggling to access fresh fruit, fresh and affordable food in Canada? You like the Jeopardy question, so here's number one.
Yeah, well, I suspect that you have an answer. I never quite understand why you ask me a question that you seem to have an answer to. I mean, food insecurity is very serious. I hope that we could take a second to talk about the answers to food insecurity. It is a devastating impact in First Nations communities, rural, remote communities. It is a very difficult thing to quantify because you have food insecurity that takes many forms, whether or not it's access to fresh fruits and vegetables or whether or not it's access to food at all. We have food deserts. So it's
Again,
difficult
Minister,
to enumerate.
thanks very much. It's clearly that you don't have the clue of what the answer is. It's 32%, which is almost a third of Canadians. And you know, again, maybe the second Jeopardy question that you seem to love, how many Canadians are visiting food banks on a regular basis?
Well, far too many. I mean, I think the question I would pose to you is...
No, you're not asking me questions.
Sure I can. I mean, that's absolutely my prerogative. You don't have the opportunity in a democracy to tell me what I can and can't do, Mr. Ellis. You cannot like it. But I'm saying that I just spent 5 minutes talking about solutions. So do you want to talk about solutions to the issue that you just raised, or do you want to just play this game where you're now going to say some statistic? Because I'm not interested in that, to be honest.
As a matter of fact, Minister, I know that you don't know the answers because we've well established that. Or you're too embarrassed to say that 2 million Canadians access food banks on a regular basis because of your government's reckless spending. Given that statistics, when you look at it, what about your temporary tax trickery? You know, when you begin to look at this, why don't you enlighten Canadians as to the actual GST amount on things like fresh fruits and vegetables and unprepared meats? What would that be?
Well, first of all, access to food banks and policies surrounding it deal with poverty. This is the government that for the first time set targets on poverty and has met them every single year. Well, we've seen too many people increasing in poverty. We see much lower levels than we saw in 2015 when we had a government, and the Conservative government, that never prioritized poverty or people who are living in food insecurity. So I would ask you what policies you have, Mr. Ellis, that would address these issues. I can enumerate the policies that we have to deal with both food insecurity and with
Minister,
food banks that are global issues, but as far as I'm aware, you have no policies on these ideas.
Dr. Ellis, please.
It's interesting because I would suggest that my job, as being in the opposition, would be to hold you to account, not to give you policies. So please tell Canadians the GST amount, it's a simple answer, on fresh meats that need to be cooked and fruits and vegetables.
So I disagree. I was in opposition. I absolutely, when I was a public safety critic, advocated for changes in policies. You have advocated none. If you're going to raise poverty and say that you care about food banks or insecurity or any such matter, having absolutely no policy that addresses those issues is irresponsible. And simply just criticizing, anybody can do that. I have a 10-year-old can do that with Google.
Thank you very much, Minister. You know, it's very clear that you do not understand that on uncooked meats and fresh fruits and vegetables, there is no GST, which directly relates to your temporary tax trick on behalf of Canadians, sadly. Can you then go on and perhaps describe the actual foods which GST will be eliminated off of with your temporary tax trick?
Well, I'm here to talk about the supplementary estimates. And so you want to talk about, again, having no policies. I can ask you, why did you vote against the Canadian Dental Care Plan? 34,000 people in your home province have access care, a program that you said didn't exist. You said nobody would sign up for. More than 90% of people have now signed up. Why do you oppose dental care for people? Why do you, as a physician, not understand the importance of primary care that dental care represents?
You know, it's interesting, Minister, because when you look at your temporary tax trick, it actually goes directly to your program with respect to dental care, because, of course, on behalf of Canadians, you voted to remove the GST on candies, candy floss, chewing gum, chocolate, popcorn, coated or treated with candy, chips, crisps, puffs, curls, sticks of popcorn, et cetera, et cetera. And could you tell me that the benefit on the dental health of Canadians that your tax trick would provide?
You might recall that this same measure was suggested by Aaron O'Toole as a temporary measure to give people relief and to give them a tax break, or something normally the Conservative support, but you don't in this instance. So I would ask again, what are your policies to deal with tooth decay? What are your policies to, actually it's to cancel dental care. You would take dental care away from people. It takes some nerve to talk about sugar on one hand and talk about axing dental care on the other. So you want to talk about oral health? What is your policy on dental care, sir?
It's very interesting, Minister, that you refuse to answer any of the questions, because that's why we invited you here, is to attempt to get some answers, which obviously you actually refuse to do. What about when we look at, Minister, the wait times in this country? Maybe this is easier for you. Can you talk about the recent report released by the Fraser Institute and talking about the longest wait times for care in the history of this country, which has happened, sadly, but not surprisingly, under your watch?
Well, actually, it's largely, you also know, of course, it's shared responsibility with the provinces, but the Kai-Hai report actually showed, which is an independent report, progress in all of those metrics. But let me come back to it. Talk about sugar. You're against giving people diabetes medication. So, you're going to talk about what we're doing on sugar, and you're against diabetes medication? You're going to criticize us on sugar in somebody's mouth, but you're against dental care? Sir, are you a physician? And if you are a physician, what would you do about people's oral health other than cut their dental care?
The sugar, Minister, you're laughable. Your answers are actually quite hilarious on behalf of Canadians. I think it's absolutely shameful that you do not understand how things work. So you want to give them diabetes medications because you want to give them more sugar?
Point of order.
Shameful.
Point of order, Mr.
That's your time, Dr. Ellis. A point of order from Ms. Sidhu.
Let's be respectful to each other. That's what I just want to request. Thank you.
Respect is earned.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, that's it for Dr. Ellis.